the second day of York, and in many ways the most interesting day of York because of some of the big names that are out there. But the names of some of the races are deeply historic. We were saying before we come in here, the Vulture Stakes. What's the reasoning behind that name? There's a lot of history there.
York is one of the finest racecourses in England, and racing has taken place there. It's also known as the Knaves Mare, once the site for public executions in 1731. It was the scene of the most famous match in English racing history when in 1851, in front of 100,000 spectators, Lord Zetland's Voltigeur met the Earl of Eglinton's The Flying Dutchman, both horses being Derby winners, respective Derby winners. And this was a kind of a grudge match that took place in the spring of 1851, because the previous year, Voltigeur had beaten the Flying Dutchman, who was started at odds of 4-1 on, in the Doncaster Cup. The reason that happened was that the jockey of Flying Dutchman was drunk, and having been given instructions to hold him up, set off at a gallop, saying, "I'll show you what we've got under me here." And the result was that Lord Zetland's Voltigeur won the race. So this was the decider. And they made sure that the jockey on the Flying Dutchman didn't have any drink on him that day, and the Flying Dutchman actually won that match. It was the last great match that took place in racing history. Other important races at the York meeting historically are in 1972 they started the Benson and Hedges Gold Cup, which is now known as the Juddmonte International, which featured Australia and a very high-class field. It was the race that Roberto won initially and beat Brigadier Gerard. It was the only defeat of Brigadier Gerard's glittering career. Other important races which take place at York historically are the Great Voltigeur Stakes, which you've mentioned, and the Ebor Handicap, which takes place on Saturday, and it's a notable St. Leger trial. The Yorkshire Oaks tomorrow, which features Tagruda, and the Nunthorpe Stakes on Friday, which has the Irish sprinter Soul Power in it. Also, the Gimcrack Stakes is run this week for 2-year-olds, and it's named after the little grey horse Gimcrack. Was first run in 1846. The owner of the winner of the Gimcrack Stakes traditionally makes the principal speech at the annual York dinner of the Gimcrack Club in December.
So, an awful lot of history.
Yeah, great history behind York. It's a beautiful racecourse. Lester Pickett's favourite track. Left-handed and a very long straight, sort of 4 furlongs of a straight, which gives every horse a chance to get out of a pocket or whatever. You know, there are no excuses really. It's a track that's very fair and it's very flat.
And a track you're probably looking at horses who can finish strongly, because some are going over different distances this week. We've seen them in the festivals previous in the summer, but I find in York you need to have a kick at the end.
Yes, the old saying of a kick at the finish is very much to the fore at York. It's not over until they get to the winning post, and very often you'll see some horse, especially in a long distance race like the Ebor Handicap, something coming out of the pack, maybe with a lightweight, to upset Sir Mark Prescott's famous horse in Saturday's race.
Well, we've got 2 extremely interesting races today where I guess all the big stars are out over those 2. Kingston Hill, first of all, who is a much hyped horse, will be expected, I think, to win the Group 2 Vulture Stakes today. 9 rivals there to contest. For you, Kingston Hill going to justify favouritism here?
Yes, I think he's probably the best horse with the best credentials in it. It's 1.5 miles. I'm not altogether sure that Kingston Hill will win the St. Leger or get the St. Leger trip. But I think today's trip will suit him. And of course, he's got Ryan Moore on board, and Ryan Moore can do absolutely no wrong at the moment. They're talking about him being the greatest jockey in the world because of his terrific success last weekend in America, where he gave a riding instruction to the American jockeys.
He is an incredibly versatile jockey. He's a guy who's won on pretty much every continent. He wins big races. And one thing I can't help but notice about Ryan Moore this week, he's got lots of big rides. This could be a huge festival for him.
Yes, absolutely. You have to pay attention to everything that Ryan Moore is on because there's such a demand for his services. He's got so much going for him at the moment. He's riding at absolutely the top of his game. Everybody wants to get a hold of him. He's got the pick of any number of horses, and he's got people working behind the scenes to make sure that he gets on the best ones. So watch Ryan Moore this week.
We're going to watch Australia later today. We're going to see Telescope as well. That is the heavyweight battle of today, and a very interesting one on paper. They've got great top speeds, and this is going to be a fast race, I reckon, the Jumonte International.
I think it's going to be a very fascinating race, Will. You're absolutely right. The horse that is out for the big test today is Australia, and I don't think he represents value at odds on, because he's meeting older horses for the first time, and you've got to respect him, and you've got to respect the opinion that they have in Ballydoyle of the horse. But today is a big test. It's probably his best trip, 1.2 miles, although he's favoured at the present for the Arc, over 1.5 miles. But yes, this will be a test today, and a great test for Joseph O'Brien, because he's riding as 8 stone 12, which for somebody of his height is absolutely amazing.
I think he's 6'1", which is just remarkable.
Well, I couldn't believe it when I read it. His best that he's done is 8 stone 13. But they said at the weekend, and he said himself, I'm going to do it.
The kid must live in the sauna.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Well,
absolutely.
He's obviously got the pick of the favourite there. Telescope gets to come in under the radar slightly, though, into this race. And
yes, he does.
Telescope's a fine horse.
Yeah, he does. He does come in. I just was a little bit disappointed with him in the King George. I thought that he would win that, but again, we underestimated Tagruda. She is an outstanding filly, so I don't think there's any shame in being second to Tagruda, and I think that horse will run a good race today. And of course, he's got Ryan Moore in the play. Well,
that brings us around nicely to tomorrow, because Tagruda is going to run in the Yorkshire Oaks. Any preview that I see is just this young filly isn't going to be beaten. There's no way. There's nothing in the field to beat her. I think we were both very impressed with her a few weeks ago.
Yeah, she's the tops. She's the real deal. She is. We just had the Oaks form to go on, and prior to that, she hadn't really been exposed. But at Ascot, she was absolutely supreme. And it's interesting to see the progeny of See the Stars are all coming good now. And as John Ox said to me recently, they improve with racing. They just get better and better. And at the moment, she looks like being a real champion. And I mean, there isn't really anything to take her down tomorrow, in my opinion.
A versatile champion as well, to be able to come through Oaks and George VI, and if she was to win on Thursday as well, that'll be a very impressive CV for this summer.
Absolutely. And I'm sure she'll go for the Arc, and I'm sure she'll be one of the favourites. Probably the German horse, who's also by See the Stars, will be her main opponent. But she's an outstanding filly, and yeah, I think it'll be a major shock if she's beaten.
Well, breeding is something you're obviously massively interested in and involved in. Is it rare to see a horse like See the Stars have such star-studded offspring? Because sometimes you get a great horse and don't necessarily have the offspring being supremely successful.
Yeah, it depends really on the pedigree. I always say that there's one thing you can't compromise on when you're breeding, and that's pedigree. And he's got a fantastic pedigree. Yeah, absolutely brilliant pedigree. He's a half-brother, See the Stars, to Galileo, who's an outstanding sire, the leading sire at the moment. And it was no surprise, really, to see him being successful. What people were a little bit sceptical about was the fact that he didn't make an immediate impact with his first runners last year, with they're only 2 years old. And you would expect that coming into middle distance races, See the Stars as a sire would really come to the fore.
Well, they can be very temperamental at 2 years of age. We have some young horses who go in the Group 2 Fillies race tomorrow as well. And there's question marks over Anthem Alexander as to which race it's actually going to go for. The Fillies tomorrow, or do you hold off till Friday? My thought would be probably tomorrow.
I think Eddie will go for the Lowther Stakes with her.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's the safest option with her. And really, she's got advantages, and I'm sure she's absolutely the most speedy animal. But she just lacks experience to take on older sprinters. And I think the best option for her and for the mare herself and for her future as a broodmare and everything is not to go for a Group 1 all-age sprint like the Nunthorpe's on Friday. Anyway, he's got Soul Power in it.
Indeed. And I would imagine Soul Power is going to be very well backed by people. It's a very popular horse. Again, coming off form and into an interesting race, because there's plenty of horses that will oppose in that Nunthorpe Stakes. We don't have the full declarations as yet, but there's going to be a strong field there.
The Nunthorpe Stakes has thrown up some pretty, long shot winners, including Soul Power, who won it at 100 to 1, and last year Joala was 33 to 1. So it's a very competitive sprint, and it's 5 furlongs. Everything has to go right from the start, from the jump out of the gate. If you miss even a half second out of the gate, it could cost you the race. So it's a very good race, very competitive race, and I wouldn't say that that Solar Power is a good thing in it, but he's got track performance, and he's got that on his CV, which is a great advantage, which you and I both agree upon. Course and distance winners are, a phenomenon in racing. Horses seem to repeat their form. So yes, I think he'll run a big race, but I wouldn't be surprised if one of the other horses who's been just below the radar this season might just nick him.
We also, of course, have Estimate running on Friday as well. We're talking about Ryan Moore. Again, another big horse with big expectations, I suppose, for the Lonsdale Cup, which is the second biggest race on Friday. Again, we'll have to wait and see what happens, but you've got Cavalryman, some other good horses in that race too.
Yeah, that's going to be a good slugging match, but I'm a little bit disappointed with Estimate. I thought maybe she'd just be a little bit better since her Gold Cup win. I mean, she wasn't supposed to be that 100% for the Gold Cup, and she ran a fantastic race, and so you'd expect a natural progression from that to into the winner's enclosure next time, but she hasn't done that, and I believe she's a little bit temperamental.
That's probably why she's in a Group 2 race this week as opposed to a Group 1, I'd imagine.
Yeah.
Saturday, then, the curtain comes down on things. We've got the Ebor, which, to me, I suppose, and again, we probably have to wait and see what happens with horses being declared, but for me, the Ebor kind of feels like one of the last big flat races of the summer period. I always associate this almost with going back to school. Late August.
You're right. It's a great race, and it's a very competitive race, and it's targeted by a lot of trainers in the north of England, who wouldn't be telling anybody about what they're getting their horse ready for. But Mark Prescott, I'm sure, has this race targeted for his horse for the last 2 years, probably. This was very highly rated 2-year-old, or 3-year-old. He was rated 111. And he seems to have come good this season. And he's been mapped out for this race. Now, the gamble has already taken place. The money's down because he was only 3 to 1 last week. I'm sure that he'll be better than that on the day. They start to come for some of the other horses. It's a ridiculous price for a handicap of such a competitive nature. But Postulation is the favourite at the moment. Mark Prescott has a great record in these races, and well, he's the one to beat at the moment.
And a bit like course and distance, you almost have to respect when trainers been getting a horse ready for a very particular race for quite some time.
Yeah, he's got a great track record, Mark Prescott, with targeting these handicaps. I think he prefers to win these handicaps than to win classic races, which every trainer is supposed to be trying to win. But Yeah, he's a very practical man, and he sort of cuts his cloth according to its measure. So he kind of, targets races which are suitable for horses, and he's very good at fitting the horse to a particular race.